Would anybody else like to share our quote to Carol Ann Tomlinson? Anybody agree or disagree?
Teaching a class can be a challenge in any situation. But when you have one student diagnosed with an attention deficit, another with Asperger's syndrome, mixed in with 2 or 3 who are grade levels ahead, just getting through a lesson can seem impossible.
And also during it, let's say somebody talks out of turn, Michael, let's say somebody talks out of turn.
Never mind igniting young minds with a passion for learning. But what if I were to tell you, promise you, that you can teach even the hardest to reach child, and at the same time create a better classroom environment for all of your students?
Okay, I definitely had experiences where I was in a classroom and they were teaching everybody the same way, and sometimes it worked for me, but oftentimes it didn't.
The Learning Disabilities Association of Colorado is an organization dedicated to the success of all students. Our mission? Helping teachers, counselors, administrators, and parents lift kids with learning differences to their full potential. We do that through consultations, advocacy on behalf of students with learning disabilities, and through seminars for teachers. You're about to see how LDAC's strategies come alive in the classroom, and there's no better model for these innovative methods than master teacher Philippe Ernewein. Since 1997, Philippe has been a teacher at Denver Academy, an independent school designed specifically for students with learning differences or non-traditional learning styles. Since 1972, Denver Academy has focused on the unique learning profile of each child, an approach that has transformed the classroom experience.
Look at you, this is fantastic. Hey, one of the ways I want to challenge you is writing is your strength, right?
And not just here. What LDAC has learned at schools like Denver Academy can work anywhere. In the average school in America, 14% of students have an identified disability. So what exactly have we learned in terms of best practices? Think about them as a 4-pronged approach, transferable to any classroom. Here are the basics. First, take a fresh look at each child in your class. And one by one, instead of asking yourself, how smart is he or how smart is she, ask, how is he smart? Second, understand the learning profiles in your classroom. Where are the visual learners, the musical learners? Are there students with attentional issues? And how do I rewrite the details of that learning style or difference in a way that will help me create breakthroughs for that child? Next, plan for differentiated instruction. This one sounds loaded. How do you reach each and every one of your kids when they all require something unique from you? Differentiated instruction is the key to your success and your students. And we'll talk about how to make differentiated instruction integral in your classroom. Lastly, we'll give you some classroom management techniques that form a strong foundation for everything else you do as a teacher. All of these things, all 4, will help you reach and teach students with learning differences, and what's more, their best practice in any classroom. To see exactly how this solution works for students, we're enlisting help from 4 truly remarkable kids from Denver Academy. Michael, Terrence, Emmy, and Paul have all benefited from having Philippe Ernewein as their teacher. They all have learning differences, and one thing is clear: for each of them, traditional teaching methods failed.
In my younger years, I spent a whole lot of time telling stories in the privacy of my own head. To the degree that it didn't really occur to me that I was different from anybody else. Sometimes I was, doing something that, that was going on in my own head that came across badly. There's one occasion I've always particularly remembered. It was in the 3rd grade, and the teacher was pulling us all together to do this reading group type of thing. And as I was walking over there, I was dreaming up a character to draw in my head, and I was trying to work out this character's expression. So as I'm walking over there, I'm going, and And she immediately proceeded to drag me out of the room and lecture me on how I was not to stick my tongue out at her. After those first couple weeks, it just turned into habit, and I would separate myself, of my own doing, simply because I was, simply because I'd been separated, just in the desks in the classroom, and so I made that connection of that must be what I'm supposed to do.
I'm introverted. That doesn't mean I'm quiet. That doesn't mean I'm antisocial. That means I am in my head a lot, and it's very overactive. Any sort of project, anything I'm doing is very intense and focused and, tunnel vision. And that was definitely a huge problem in a traditional setting. By the time it was 8th grade into high school, it was actually, I got more confrontation from other kids in class than from the teachers, who would say, geez, Paul, you're being all spazzy and you're not listening and you're always whatever. And it'd be funny for them, and I was almost like quaint, the class clown, the, ever-present kind of archetype. But it got a little frustrating. Like, it definitely set aside myself as a fringe character I built, and I hesitate not to call it a legacy of disaster and failure and this weird, because you can't take pride in your work, you end up having to take pride in your failure.
I was diagnosed with ADD in 2nd grade, and I've always said that I pretty much think every 2nd grader has ADD. So it didn't really feel like I had a problem then, but it basically consisted of forgetting my lunchbox and making excuses, like my dog ate my homework, like that kind of thing. I got it done, but it would get lost in my backpack. It got to a point where I just didn't want to be in class, just because I do little things that I thought were normal, but they clearly didn't. So you just don't understand what's wrong. And you see your friends sitting there like at the desks doing their work, and you're sitting there like, God, give me a deck of cards or something, because I can't sit here, and you don't get it. So then you say, can I go to the bathroom? I need to go to the bathroom. And you'll stay there for the rest of the class, because you just can't sit there for that long.
How I literally felt was a bunch of just energy, just balled up. I wanted to run around and do, a billion things at once. And so knowing that I couldn't do that all the time that I wanted to was really hard. It was not knowing why either, too, was a big thing. I'm more hyper than everyone else, and for what reason, It was mostly with 7th grade. I had a teacher that, since I was so disruptive in class every day, she'd just send me to the office right when I got to her class. So she just, didn't ever want to talk to me about it or anything. It kind of hurt, like, because I was really, because I wasn't doing it on purpose like she thought I was.
4 remarkable kids, and each of them received an invaluable gift in the course of their education that has transformed how they approach learning and brought them to where they are today. It's a gift every single teacher can bring into his or her classroom to create that same transformation over and over again. So let's get to it.
So much of the problem, whether you're talking about students who have trouble in school or creativity in general, is that schools are built upon this question of asking, how smart are you? And that really schools need to start moving toward this question. And that's why I'm grateful to be at the Denver Academy, because I think we ask this every single day. And that is, how are you smart?
At school, it was hard because I was a smart kid, and I was put in the stupid kid pile just because.
Even though they're often very bright, many kids with learning differences are given the clear message they're not smart enough to do the work.
People think, oh, since he can't focus, he can't do anything. Instead, I can't focus on one thing, I can do multiple things at once.
I've been wondering, kind of in this last week of preparing with these students and doing research, what it would be like to be a fly on the wall, say on Albert Einstein's Parent-Student-Teacher Conference. or Pablo Picasso's parent-student-teacher conference? What would have been said there? What would have been happening there? Can you imagine Mr. and Mrs. McCartney? Paul really needs to stop writing silly little love songs, right? Or can you imagine Mr. and Mrs. Davis, it's time that Miles puts down the trumpet and pick up the math book.
Philippe offers an acronym that can help you remember the different types of intelligences in your classroom.
And at Denver Academy, we're fond of saying, follow your bliss.
Body or natural intelligence for the athletes and dancers. Logical and quantitative for the mathematicians. Intrapersonal for students who like to look inward, or interpersonal for the extroverts. And spatial or musical for artists, musicians, and performers. That first day of school each year, when you meet a student, any student, instead of the fundamental question we all secretly ask ourselves, that question, how smart are you? Look at that student and wonder, how are you smart?
I think asking this question will truly revolutionize the learning experience and change the story of learning for tens of thousands of students around the world right now. And it's going to unlock unfathomable potential, talent, creativity, innovation that I think honestly has been punished, marginalized, and overlooked for way too long.
Each student brings his or her unique learning profile into the classroom.
I just want to spend a moment on the part that we have no control over, and that is the student traits. Look, we can influence this and nudge and be like that river and bend the banks a little bit, but ultimately, this is the stuff we can't necessarily change. Their readiness level, all these students are coming in with a certain readiness level to a classroom, to this presentation, varying interests. We can influence those interests. I think that's part of our job as educators, but they're coming in with a certain set of interests. Their learning profile, again, we can influence that, create strategies, but they're coming in wired a certain way, and all differently. And the last piece is affect. How are they feeling about their own learning? Seth, what are you thinking about?
I think I'm going to write a narrative.
The traits a student brings into the classroom may be beyond our control, although by focusing on what we can control, we can influence them. Understanding those traits and rewriting them for ourselves is something we can master.
So if you could take a moment right now, let me kind of get off the stage and get the students ready, and turn to your journals, but you're thinking about a student right now, or you're thinking about your own learning. You are. I know you are. That's why you're here, you're passionate, you're invested. So my question to you is, who are you thinking about?
I am sure you've had students who are difficult to reach. Right now, and as we go forward, I want you to think about those students. A kid who just can't seem to focus, who panics over tests, who's so bright but refuses to do the work. Learning differences show up as behaviors like these. To break through, understand a student's diagnosis, and then, this is critical, rewrite it.
Let's take a closer look at rewriting. We're really almost rewriting a curse here in a way and turning it into a blessing. So how can we make the information that is given to us by this diagnostic statistical manual and make it more useful for us as educators, as individuals, as adults who are involved in the lives of children?
I'm very hyperactive and impulsive.
Our 4 students explained this best at our last conference. What they're about to read from is the accepted standard, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders.
I've never particularly liked the word disorder in this context. It's more of an alternate order.
Watch what happens when Michael and Paul reframe the question, how smart are you? And tell us just how they're smart. We begin with Michael's own diagnosis, Asperger's syndrome.
For example, we have under heading A here, marked impairment in the use of multiple nonverbal behaviors, such as eye-to-eye gaze, facial expression, body postures, and gestures to regulate social interaction. How could we rewrite that?
We could say what you mean. I mean, and you're a teacher, you ought to be verbalizing everything. You can't expect to cross your arms and go like this, tut, tut, tut. Sometimes an Asperger's person might not notice that that means stop what you're doing. So say what you mean, be verbal and be clear.
Number 2, failure to develop peer relationships appropriate to developmental level. This person is extremely resistant to peer pressure.
Persistent preoccupation with parts of objects. You notice details. This is a blessing.
You can use this approach to rewrite the learning profile of just about any student.
And one of the things that I think applies to me and may apply to other people is that I have more understanding, taking interest in something that actually interests me.
For instance, ADHD. Here's what the manual says. ADHD symptoms include difficulty staying focused and paying attention, difficulty controlling behavior, and hyperactivity. And here's a rewritten version. Adept at multitasking. Abundant energy that can be directed into learning. Sometimes, all you need to rewrite a kid's learning profile, and maybe his future in education, is a fresh pair of eyes. The result is nothing short of transformative.
And then where do I go? Where do I go?
Now we come to the big gorilla. With all these different learning profiles in the classroom, all these personalities, interests, needs, somehow we need to differentiate instruction in a way that benefits all of our students. We understand this is no simple task. Here's how a group of very dedicated teachers expressed their concerns about differentiating instruction.
In the general ed class that I teach in, you have kids that are really high readers, really low readers, and trying to find something that's meaningful for everyone. That's an area where I struggle.
It's a dance you're doing constantly, and it takes so much energy to, this person over here needs to have this, and then I have to take the 2-step over here, and then the waltz step over here with this one. And by the time, to keep that level of energy all the time in a classroom is impossible.
Maybe another week would help the kid, but your district or whatever saying, no, at this point, you have to be here. Since music isn't tested, I didn't really realize that until I started teaching AP music theory. And you have to get your kids ready to take the test. So even when you don't really intend to do that, you start teaching towards the test.
It becomes less about the kids and more about the curriculum or reaching these goals. And they're often, it's not their arbitrary goals by any means, but if the goal is really about the student and making them whole and really making a connection, you can't have a test for that. How do you score that? So it becomes, I think, very easy to distract teachers from what truly is essential.
A lot of times it feels like you're on the verge of unlocking something great, and then the management of the classroom gets in the way, and you have to deal with the other students, who still need your attention, but you're right on the verge of something wonderful, and then you get called away to do something else, and that moment is so brief and it's lost.
Every one of these concerns is legitimate. Every single one. There's not enough time, not enough money, not enough understanding of what teachers go through on a daily basis. But now I'm going to ask you, even if you're feeling a little spent, to think back to that very first day standing in front of a class. What was your vision for that classroom? What did you want to bring to those kids? Maybe you're doing exactly that. Or maybe you're coming to the conclusion those goals were never realistic. If you're right now trying to forget you ever had that vision, please don't. Hang on to it for a while longer.
With school, it was hard because when they don't want you involved in class, it really takes a toll. When no one wants you around and you don't want to be there.
It was very easy to disappear and, be kind of in that structure. And that was the point where the teachers were like, well, it's your decision to fail. And trying to incite this kind of guilt in me. And I was like, okay, great, fantastic. So I'll just be here and you'll be there and I can do my thing and you can do the thing. It'll work perfect.
Remember, there's no wrong answer, but you're writing down your response to this.
Differentiated instruction means you're flexible in how you teach. You manage your class and present your curriculum so each individual learner can fulfill their promise. Students have options in how they take in what you're teaching, how they make sense of it, and how they demonstrate what they've learned. Here's what's critical as you differentiate instruction. Each step along the way, remember the learning profiles in your classroom. and how you've rewritten them. Based on those varied profiles, establish your goals. What do you expect each student to know and understand? What tasks should they be able to perform? Now share your goals with your kids so they know what's expected of them. And lastly, this is the fun part. Look at the basic content and tasks and get creative. How can you adapt them for a range of learners? How can you draw in the varied interests and passions you see in those young faces?
If you try to teach a student purely on an academic level, academia and students generally are not compatible in and of themselves. But if you provide even one small step to the emotional and psychological development of that student, then suddenly you have earned their respect and their attention. And everything becomes easier.
Let me be clear here. We are not talking about teaching to the lowest common denominator, nor are we talking about personalized instruction for every child in your class. So what are we talking about? It will help if we break differentiated instruction down further into classroom elements. By classroom elements, I mean content, process, and product. When we talk about differentiating content, we mean giving a class options in what they learn, options that fit a range of readiness levels and appeal to different interests, genders, and backgrounds. Differentiated process means communicating the lesson in a variety of ways. Differentiated product means giving kids some creative license in how they show you what they've absorbed. You'll see all three classroom elements addressed here in a lesson about how individuals learn. First, differentiating content. Since this is a lesson about different styles of learning, Philippe has asked students to focus on themselves as learners. Content is differentiated from the start.
We pick something that we like, and if that's appropriate for school, of course, we can do that. Yeah. If you're more into it, you put more energy into it.
Now, differentiated process. Paul tells us why differentiating process is so important.
We're letting ourselves become disaffected and disenchanted with simply because of the way it's presented, or because we can't present it back in an interesting way, or because we simply don't get it because it's being told to us and we'd rather read it, or it's being read to us and we'd rather see it, or it's being, or we're looking at it and we'd rather do this or that.
That can be a basic class discussion, because for some of your students, that's great. Make sure the kids who need your help most are closer to you during the discussion. Walk around the room. Let your students partner or break them into groups so they can help each other. Move from one team to the next. When you reach a group that's easily grasping the material, spur them on to learn more. With a group that's struggling, remediate. Go over the basics one more time. Remember, relatively few kids are auditory learners, whether they're diagnosed with learning differences or not. So write things down.
As Barrett is handing out part of one of the handouts for today, let's get started by on the board we have our Do Now.
Provide an outline or guided notes whenever possible. Use your overhead or whiteboard.
I want us to respond to this quote. You can write down the quote or not write down the quote. What I definitely want you to write down is, do you agree with that? Can you think of examples in your own life where that's been the case?
One very simple tool, giving students a heads up about what's coming next.
We're moving into the mini lesson. Okay, and it's really our mini lesson today is the project introduction. This is not a surprise. You know this is coming. We've talked about this already, and you can follow along in the handout.
And one more trick. Think of creative ways to add a physical component to learning.
Dominic, do you mind sharing? Can I throw the ball at you? Go ahead. What'd you write?
I agree. I feel that every student learns things in different ways.
Anybody else care to share? Either do you agree, or can you think of an example in your life where maybe you were one of these students? We'll go Bridget, Kelsey, Barrett, right across there. Start with Bridget.
With dyslexia, you have different ways than everyone else of learning.
These suggestions are what we call low prep. You can incorporate them into your school year without major changes to the way you teach. Differentiated product asks each of your students to get in touch with how he or she processes information and to tap into his or her gifts and passions. By product, we mean the major assignment for a unit. Now we're going to challenge you with a high prep strategy for differentiating product. Say you've got a kid who sits toward the back of the room, who's checking out. He's lost in the class discussion, even when you're right in front of him, or when you're writing everything on the board. But you know that boy is artistic. Or maybe you're trying to reach a girl who loves music, hums to herself all through third period and drums on the desk when she thinks you're not looking. You can offer these two very different students alternatives in how they approach a project, how they show they've mastered the material.
Here I have a few pictures to share with you of how students in the past have done the project that you're about to do right now.
Philippe asks his class to complete a product that sums up who they are and how they learn for a teacher they haven't met yet.
Identify your learning strengths and areas of need.
By offering students alternatives, you're giving them new ways to grasp success.
Our project will have two parts. And the first part is the written part.
In this case, Philippe makes a written component mandatory, but the students can write a script, a journal, a newspaper article, whatever type of document they want. But watch what happens as their choices widen for the second part of this project. Options based on the particular way each student is smart.
You could do a self-portrait, a cartoon, printing, photography, documentary. You could do an interview.
I'm a very musical inclined person. I'm a theatrical person. I'm here till 6 o'clock every night in theater, practicing for the musical, the plays, whatever. I gave my life to this school pretty much. And knowing that I can take a project and I still have to do the essays, I still have to do what I don't want to, I still have to do math problems, but I can also incorporate what I love to do with the projects, which really helps. And I've become such a great writer, and I actually enjoy math now because the teachers know what I'm interested in, and I get to incorporate that into all that I do.
Okay, Zach, what are you thinking about?
I'm thinking about doing a comic book.
Differentiated products are usually graded and are most effective when students help grade themselves.
Learning is only so much. Connecting is what you need to do. I mean, sure, maybe the curriculum at school isn't the most fascinating stuff, but I'll tell you this, it does lead some pretty amazing stuff if you let it. If you let this information grow and connect and intertwine, it's crazy what you can discover.
Let's talk briefly about one tool for differentiated instruction that both teachers and students say is a standout. It's a medium prep strategy that combines content, process, and product. It's journaling with your students.
The journal can really help you feel like you have a part in the classroom, have a relationship with your teacher, can really help out a relationship. Me and Mr. Ernewein really didn't have the best relationship before I was in his classroom for sophomore year. I used to have less hair, and I'd have a beanie with nails in it, and I couldn't have that at school because I could hurt other people. And he had to take that away from me. I have things with hats, and I don't like people taking it away from me. So he was the devil in my eyes, really didn't like him. So throughout our year, we journaled and got to know each other a little bit better, and he's one of my favorite people ever now.
He handed out all these little composition notebooks, and just once a week, we would write him a little paragraph even, about something we thought had happened this, week, or one of our opinions, something we were having a problem with. We had to journal him at least once a week.
The journal is a relationship builder, a chance for them to tell you who they are.
I wrote, I think, every day or every other day. But his deal is as soon as you turn in your journal, he will get back to you within 24 hours, which is awesome, and I've never really heard of someone that can do that, but that's huge.
None of this is easy. Differentiated instruction takes time, energy, commitment. The teachers we spoke with agree, though, it's all worth it.
There just isn't always time for creativity every day. So I think, I think the important part is that there is going to be time for that. And if there's not at all, then it's hard to maybe build up and withstand some of the times with the repetition and the practice.
I think we need to give students that sense of empowerment. They want to be treated and taught as an individual, not as a student or as a member of a class. And I think that as long as we do that and we form relationships with individual students and we teach the student, not the curriculum or the group, we're actually targeting our instruction to individual students and styles of learning, I think that's where we find the most success.
Finally, we should talk about learning environment. Learning environment has a number of facets to it, and it helps to remember the acronym PRESS. P, pragmatic learning environment. Anything you do more than once, make a routine for it. That way, everyone knows their role and what to expect. R, relationship. Simply saying hello, greeting your students, can improve the relationship environment in your classroom dramatically. Environmental. Does what's around them connect to the content you're teaching? And finally, spatial. A new study tells us we all learn best when we vary environments, so redesign your space often.
Not to sing any praises, but Ernewein happened to be my teacher, and one of the first things we did is we went for a hike, the whole class. Yes, we can go outside and we can walk on this beautiful fall afternoon. We're going to walk up there and we're going to write, and that was just huge. I was like, I knew it was going to be different.
Learning environment leads neatly into the fourth and last of the best practices we'll cover here, classroom management. In pursuit of good classroom management, here's another acronym for you, HANDS. HANDS is a helpful guide for group interactions. H, hands up. Verbally remind students to raise their hands when they want to contribute. A, arm raised. Your arm goes up as a visual reminder for students to raise their hands before talking. N, need to wave off. When someone in the class is disruptive or off task, wave them off. And if that doesn't get the job done, D, direct confrontation. Look that student straight in the eyes, use his or her name, and explain the consequence of their behavior. And then, if the student still won't cooperate, S, see you after class. Effective classroom management goes beyond rules and reminders like these. It's balancing serious work with a little celebration when your students meet their goals. It's not just up to you to create a great place to learn, it's up to your kids too. Now, we've covered a lot of ground together here, but let me assure you, these solutions are real. The difference they make is real. The kids you met here today, they were the problem children. Now, they're leaders.
I know so much more about myself now than I think I ever would my entire lifetime in just 3 years. My dream is to own a salon / spa, and I am well on my way to doing that.
Terrence plans to study paleontology.
4-star varsity baseball letterman, music lover, creative spirit, justice advocate, future paleontologist, high school graduate, Terrence
I'd even say proud of myself that I've gotten this far, because I don't ever thought I would think about getting this far. Teachers caring about me made me care about school, and then that made me want to be successful.
I have definitely become almost to a dangerous degree just immersed in all the stuff that I am personally exploring and that I'm learning at school. I feel like I can do what I feel is important or what I feel is unimportant, but I like to do anyways.
The way you continue to learn as a teacher is by taking feedback from your students. It's not the teacher helping the student up to their level. It's the two of them growing together, which is absolutely the best form of that.
There's no nobler profession than teaching. No job comes with greater rewards. For a child struggling with a learning difference, you are the best hope. Your continued learning, your commitment to excellence, your creativity as a teacher can reinvent someone's future. Good luck. And anytime you need a little help, you can always find us here.